It's time for All Hands on Tech.
Climb on board as hosts Amina and Isaac explore all of the amazing things happening in Nova Scotia's tech sector. Each episode, we will chat with local experts to uncover the secrets of what makes Nova Scotia the best place for collaboration, innovation, and creativity.
All Hands on Tech is proudly produced by Digital Nova Scotia, the industry association for Nova Scotia's growing tech sector.
Thank you so much for joining us, and it's a huge pleasure to have you here in the Podstarter studio on our second episode of our new podcast series. It's super exciting.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here. I've never been here before, so it's very cool.
Yeah, so maybe introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. So I'm Ingrid Dion. I am the CEO of WordCraft. It's a social media marketing agency, and we're headquartered in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. There are no other social media marketing agencies in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. So we have that unique ability to say that we're the only ones. So yeah, we specialize in organic social media strategy, content creation, community management, and reporting. I guess that's sort of what makes us unique, is that we specialize in organic. We don't do paid campaigns. I mean, we do once in a while, but our zone of genius is organic social. And we work with, really big clients like Nestle Canada and Kraft Heinz and Manulife Bank. We're working with the Toronto Raptors on an ad
That's
soon.
so exciting.
It's crazy.
Go Raptors.
And we also work with small businesses like across North America. We just got our first U.S. client. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Super exciting stuff. Yeah,
yay.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
really
you.
cool.
And does the rest of your team also live in the Yarmouth area, or are you kind of spread all throughout Nova Scotia?
2 others are in Yarmouth, and then we have one person who is in Halifax. She's in France right now because, I don't care where you are as long as you get your work done.
Yeah.
So she's in France, and then another part of our team is on PEI.
Wow.
Yeah,
Sweet.
but we're very almost all Nova Scotia, I guess all maritime based.
Yeah.
And all women too.
Woo.
Yeah.
That's
Love that.
really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have some rapid fire questions for you. So feel free to just kind of choose the first option or choice that comes to mind. But of course, no rush. Take your time.
Cool.
So question 1, coffee or tea?
Tea, although I have both.
Yeah.
A little confusing for the people.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
can't see,
They
though.
can't see it, but
Yeah. But I am number 1 a tea drinker, just black tea. Although I do sometimes have one coffee maybe every 2 days or something.
And number 2 here is Netflix or Amazon Prime.
Neither. So
Okay.
I am sort of weird in that way, and I don't really consume any TV or movies. I know it's
Okay.
weird. I listen to podcasts, so
Oh.
great that I'm on
There
a
you go.
podcast.
This is so on brand for you.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah, and I read books, but I don't watch any TV.
Any visual media at all?
Not particularly. I'll watch. I mean, I'm on TikTok all the time. Social media I watch. But I don't know if it's an attention span thing, but I can't.
All right. Next one is Apple or Samsung?
Oh, Apple. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Last thing you ate.
Well, I'm having coffee and tea right now, but I met a pal for sushi for lunch, so that was pretty awesome. She's actually the person who hired me at the agency where I used to work. So how I got into social media marketing, I guess, was all because of her. And so we just had lunch together. It was lovely.
Full circle moment.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And the last question here is, what's your favorite provincial park in Nova Scotia?
Definitely Islands Park in Shelburne County. I know, maybe a strange pick, but it is so stinking cute. It is across the harbor from the town of Shelburne, and if you've ever been to the town of Shelburne, you know that it's super duper adorable.
Yes.
So when you're camping in Islands Park, you see Shelburne across the harbor. It's beautiful. The park is really nice. You can go swimming. We go camping there in the summer. And I have a Prius, and I have a tent that fits on the back of my Prius.
I love that.
And I
that
have
for you.
a special blow-up mattress that is made just for the Prius. It's I've got it all figured out.
Yeah. If I didn't have dogs, I wanted something like that.
Yeah.
'Cause then
Well,
you could
I have
just
a
camp on your
child,
tent.
but the child goes in the tent.
Yes, yeah,
And,
yeah.
So, anyways, my poor child.
Banished to the tent.
Yeah, stay in your tent.
So, in your opinion, how does Nova Scotia rank as a tech hub?
Ooh. Well, that's a funny question considering I am on the board of Digital Nova Scotia.
That's why we asked.
Yeah, like, what is your answer?
Is this a test?
Yeah, it is actually. We're just bringing people on who are on our board so
Yeah.
that we can quiz them.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. You know, I think it's a great place to be because, and so I'm going to put my little pitch for rural because that's
110%.
Please do.
Yeah, so I am a huge proponent of embracing the talent that exists in rural Nova Scotia that has sort of been banished to the, I don't know, the corners for a little while because for so long you had to come to Halifax or, you know, go outside of Nova Scotia, you know, go to Toronto, you know, Waterloo of all places, but it's a very big tech hub.
Yeah.
Or elsewhere, you know, to get a job in tech. But there is so much talent outside of these urban centers. And I think the pandemic was a great thing for that because now everyone can telecommute. And so you can hire people from places like Yarmouth, places like, you know, Port Hawkesbury, places like Truro, Amherst, Pictou, wherever, and have them on your team. They don't need to be in Halifax, and that is the beautiful thing about our area, about our province. And people are moving in from, you know, as everyone knows, people are moving from everywhere to come to Nova Scotia because it's an amazing place.
Absolutely.
And they're bringing all of their tech knowledge and they're bringing their tech companies here and their expertise. And so I think it's a really great time for tech in Nova Scotia.
I find too the beauty of Nova Scotia is, to your point exactly, is that there's so many opportunities in rural spaces. Like a lot of folks think I live in Halifax, but I live in like Great Village area, which is like 15 minutes outside Truro. So like I just commute up once a week, and it's really nice because I get to see everyone, but also I get to go back to my cozy little house. And just it's just so accessible nowadays.
Yeah.
And I think that's my favorite like comment is that like people always think in Nova Scotia you have to live in Halifax, you have to live in HRM, like this is where tech lives. But
And also, if you live in the rural areas, you get the areas. you get to work with a view. So many times I've called members, video called them, and they're sitting in the valley overlooking this beautiful winery.
Yeah.
Working, or they're at the beach. That one's a little hectic because there's the sand issue, but I've called people and they're working from these beautiful spaces, whether it's a winery, whether it's the beach, whether it's like near the lake, from a cabin.
Yeah.
I'm just like amazed by how accessible work is now with telecommuting and working remotely.
Absolutely. And this is something that I've been waiting for a long time. I have worked from home. I've been like the foreign correspondent in quotations for so many jobs that I've had. I've been working from home since 2004, I guess.
Trailblazer.
wow.
Yeah. And so when I was looking for a job in marketing, I was, you know, living in Yarmouth County. I couldn't move to Halifax because I was a single mom and I shared custody of my son. And so to move to Halifax and make him have to go visit his dad 3 hours away on the weekend would have been
That's really tough.
pretty unfair to him. So I was looking for jobs and, you know, I would get interviews and I'd say, okay, here's the thing. I live in Yarmouth County. I can't really move to Halifax. And, you know, it would be just a done deal. No, we're not even going to entertain that. Yeah. And the reason that I got a job at an agency in Halifax was because the person who hired me took a chance on some single mom who was living under the poverty line, and they gave me a job, and they allowed me to work from Halifax 1 day a week and work from home the rest of the week.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
that's like kudos to that person because
No, honestly, and it takes people taking chances on others to be like, you know what, like so many people do better work at home in their own spaces, and some people do better work when they're in an office environment. But I think giving people the flexibility to do that is really important, especially for yourself if you have like a kid, or maybe you're like caring for someone, like a parent or someone, you know,
And
that you need
flexibility,
that.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but flexibility is key. And I think what has like opened up the doors and the Pandora's box for Nova Scotia is that flexibility, because now you get people who can live their best life and move to a province where they have that scenery and they can do the same work that they were doing in the city without having to worry about the commute, the stress, all of it. So it's such a good work-life balance that we're introducing into the space where we can work remotely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And another thing is that I have a beautiful office space in Yarmouth.
I see it on your story and I'm like, oh my goodness.
It's beautiful,
Yeah, it
isn't
looks
it?
like a fairy tale.
Yeah. It's amazing. It is the best office space in Yarmouth, like hands down. I have it. Like it is mine. And because I'm in Yarmouth, you know, it's super duper cheap. It costs me $500 a month for my for my beautiful loft office with these enormous windows and these super high ceilings. And
Should we move our office?
I was going to say, yeah.
I recommend, you know, decentralizing the digitalness of Nova Scotia and, you know, getting agencies. And, you know, there is definitely a case to be made for, you know, just getting out to those corners of the province and, you know, setting up shop there.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting perspective, because I know there are some rural areas in Nova Scotia that were once kind of industrial, and they had like factories, and they had like more like physical workspaces. And since that kind of industrial vibe died out, the town is dying. Didn't Reese was on last episode, and he said that, you know, he's co-hosting a podcast or producing a podcast that's about Amherst. And if telecommuting, or I'm saying that wrong, aren't I?
No, you're saying that
telecommuting
right.
and working remotely is something that we're doing. We can breathe life into those cities that were once huge spaces to work
And showcase the talent that exists there.
Precisely.
To
Yes.
revive that, because
revive
that's what
them.
we really need in Nova Scotia these days. And I think this is also like a really, really prime transition into like the next question here. But for yourself, especially when you started WordCraft, what are the barriers to entry when there are opportunities in tech?
That's a good question. You know, it's never easy to start a business. It's like no one's ever ready. And I thought that I would be ready at some point. You know, I'd kind of been thinking about starting a business. And what I would do was I would meet with anyone who was an entrepreneur and try to like absorb some of that entrepreneurness from them. I thought that maybe having a coffee with them would help.
Yeah.
I'm sure it did.
I mean, I guess it just helped like solidify the fact that I wanted to do it. But it didn't help me be ready and you know, have all of my ducks in a row and be ready to start a business. I never ever got there, and I don't think anyone ever gets there. Like you just have to start. You just have to take a leap and just hope for the best. So I think there are many barriers to entry because no one's ever ready. I mean, maybe if you have like an MBA and, you know, you've studied a lot or something, but maybe even then you're never ready. I don't know. I can't see that anyone is ever ready for starting a business. So yeah, I found it extremely difficult because I felt like I knew my craft really well. I knew social media really well. I had been working in it for years, but had no idea how to run a business. And so I joined Ignite, which is a innovation hub in
also
Yarmouth.
a member of ours.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
familiar.
So I joined Ignite because I thought, okay, these people will help me. And, you know, it did help. That was a community that I could be a part of, and there were other entrepreneurs there, and we could bounce ideas off of each other, and so that was amazing.
Sweet.
So, you know, I just tapped into various people and various resources, whatever I could. I you know, applied for different programs and coaches and all kinds of stuff just to try to learn as much as I could. But I did find, you know, it's a bit hard, number one, when you're a woman, and starting a business. And, number two, when it's a service-based business and it's not necessarily something that people can hold and touch. And, you explain that you're a social media marketer and not everyone knows what that even means. Like, you're on Facebook all day. Like, is that what you're doing?
I hear that all the time.
So yeah, it's kind of hard to make people understand, especially when a lot of the coaches are much older and maybe they don't have a whole lot of knowledge about tech. So that's another issue, trying to find those mentors who have a lot of experience in business, but most of them don't really have a lot of experience in like digital or tech.
Looking for a new opportunity and want to get involved in tech? Open to all Atlantic Canadian residents, Skills for Hire Atlantic offers free, bilingual, and virtual in-demand digital and professional skills training. Hear what past participant Ashley Burke had to say about the program.
For me, I think the Skills for Hire program is as much to do with tech as it is for career decision making. For me, gaining that knowledge that I needed and make me feel more confident in being part of conversations that I didn't feel I could be part of before. The Skills for Hire program is very good. It has a lot of interesting facts, good knowledge, good people behind it. It's a career journey.
Applications close July 18th. Apply now at skillsforhire.ca.
So I'm curious myself too, what in your journey, when did you kind of come to the realization that the type of work that you wanted to do, you wanted to kind of own that rather than work for an agency or work for a nonprofit or go down the, and partner with startups or whatever? Like, what made you decide that, like, I want to do this, like, solo journey?
That is a funny origin story. So
Let's hear it.
So I was working for that agency that hired me in Halifax, and I started as a social media coordinator, just a very entry-level position, and I worked my way up to manager of social pretty fast, which was amazing. And I was managing a team of like 10 to 12 people in Halifax and Toronto, mostly from my home in Pubnico, Nova Scotia. And, I had a little raise when I went from coordinator to manager, but not a big raise. But okay, maybe I could do this myself. Maybe I could have my own business.
Well, here we are.
Yeah.
And here we are. Yeah. So that's kind of where the seed was planted, because I never wanted to run my own business. Like, my dad had his own business and it was never really something that I wanted to do. And that was it.
And this is circa, like, what year was this?
The early 2019, because I started working, I left the agency and took a job with Manulife Bank.
Okay.
They're now my client, but I took a job because they wanted to launch social channels, and I was like, oh, well, this will be good. And they offered me like way more money than the agency was paying me. So I took that job. And I launched their social media channels, and at the time I was taking on clients on the side. And so Nestle was one of the big clients at the agency, and they came to me afterwards. So I had them on the side.
As they should.
Yes, so I had them
Cut
on
out the middleman.
Yeah, and I had Manulife Bank full time, and then started working with Cove Kombucha back then.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, that was fun. And at some point it just got too much with clients on the side, and I thought, well, maybe I can just do this
on your own.
Yeah.
Good for you for
full-time.
taking that initiative. And this has been, 3 years now about?
Almost, yeah.
So what have you observed about the climate in terms of women in tech? Are we seeing more women in tech since then? Or are we seeing less?
I think it's hard to say, because I think back then I didn't really know, but I think the pandemic has been pretty good for tech overall. Like, I always feel a little bit scared about making those statements, because I know it hasn't been easy for everyone, and it's been really hard for a lot of people. But I think a lot of the tech industry has done quite well, because we're not tied down to a brick and mortar or a location or anything.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's been a really big opportunity for women. Another thing about just the pandemic for women is I find it's been a really great leveler in terms of working from home with children. Before the pandemic, I worked from home with a child, and I always had to, I had this policy where I had my home office door closed and a sign on the door that said, "Mom is in a meeting."
I love that.
Yeah. And then the pandemic happened, and, you would see men on calls and their children would come in.
Yeah.
Flying in too.
Yes.
How
Oh,
many?
it's screaming.
How many YouTube clips have you seen and spent like hours of your time when you should have been doing other stuff, maybe looking at these clips of kids barging in on the men, and it's almost always the men. The
Yeah.
women seem to have had like a better handle.
Yeah.
I think we were told, like, you must have your work face on and you can't have your mum face on.
Yeah.
And so, block out your children. But then the pandemic happened and suddenly everyone was home with children. And so it just became this normal thing. The first time a kid barged in on a man, it became acceptable. So
Yeah.
I didn't have to have that sign on my door anymore that said, "Mom's in a meeting, don't come in." Like now, if I'm on a client meeting and my son comes in and he says, like, "Can I do this?" And I'm like, "Okay."
Also,
on a
normalize being human beings. We're
I
human
know.
beings. We're not robots. We're working.
Yeah.
Yes, we're at work, but we're also human beings with like personal responsibilities.
Yeah.
And
Well, and you're especially working from home, and even if you're in the office, you need to have time to step away and like take a personal phone call or be like, "Let me check on my kids or my dogs or my family." Like,
make sure they're fed.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, these are the things that keep us going. If our kids are not okay, if our responsibility, I say kids, I have a pet, but if all's not good with them, all can't be good with us, and that will reflect on our work anyway. So
Yeah.
let's not
Exactly.
pretend that work is our only responsibility. Let's normalize being human beings in the workspace. And I think
Yeah.
the pandemic has opened up, like you said, a lot of acceptability for that.
Yeah.
A lot of grace for us being human and going through all of this together. Such a devastating couple years it was for many people, as you mentioned. I think it's just normalized being human and being vulnerable and having those responsibilities outside of just 9 to 5, crunch some numbers or pull some posts or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
the case
And
is.
with that too, just on the note of normalizing being human beings, I think the amount of people who are really leading the way to recognize where we've done good and where we've done wrong, especially in terms of diversity and like women in tech. Like there's so many amazing new initiatives coming out to like help put women forward where they should be and in leadership positions where they should be. And even when it comes to, like BIPOC people, trans people, disabled people, like we're really pushing that forward. And, as we've all been saying, as unfortunate as the pandemic has been, I think it's really put pressure on C-suite to be like recognize
Yes.
who is sitting at the top and what they're doing to actually support people who are underneath them. And I'm thrilled to see what the next like 5 to 10 years looks like in that aspect, because we're seeing female CEOs coming out and
Yes, please.
female and like female leaders, female entrepreneurs, like people that aren't afraid to be like, yeah, I own this business and I'm a woman, like I'm proud to be a woman.
Yeah, totally agree. And I do think, things are definitely getting better for women. Like with my company, I have only hired women. It's not necessarily because I don't want to hire any men. It's just that's
the
how
best
it's
for the
worked.
job?
Yeah,
exactly.
And the women who I've found who have showed up at my door and asked me for jobs and happened to be qualified for exactly what I needed, which is sort of how all of my hires have happened. They just all happen to be women and all happen to be amazing.
There we go.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask we kind of referenced this already. I actually kind of led into this. I don't know why I'm being good at that today. But how do you envision Nova Scotia's tech sector in 5 years?
Oh, sort of like you were both saying, I hope that there is so much more diversity. And I do think that there will be, but also more people from like rural areas. I'm going to say it over and over again. I'm here to represent the rural
Yes.
area.
Shout it out loud and proud.
We're
happy
here
to hear
for it.
But yeah, I just think, there are so many people are finding that, they don't just have to hire the traditional person that they pictured as soon as they wrote the job description. Like your job description could fit many, many different people. It's not necessarily just whoever you had in mind. So I definitely hope that it continues in that trajectory.
Yeah. And you know what? The diversity is especially important because we work in an industry that's ever changing, ever progressing, and things are things are moving quick, and Nova Scotia is a very small fish in a big pond. Yes, I did that.
Ooh.
Because that's the name of this episode. And we can't necessarily keep up with what's going on with the rest of the world if we do not diversify our workforce.
Well, look at
Honestly.
Toronto, right?
How are we going to keep up with the tech leading people from Silicon Valley to Japan
Yeah.
if we're hiring only one kind of people in one specific fixed space? You know, we'll
Absolutely.
never keep up. So diversity isn't just important for being a good human being. It's important for the bottom line.
Yeah.
How do you keep up? How do you stay innovated and motivated?
And there's a critical aspect too of experience that comes from identity, and people, I find so often people disregard that, even, you know, including like in interviews, like they only want to talk about like the technical stuff, like, do you know coding? Like, do you code HTML, CSS? Do you know how to write and schedule like a social post, like things like that? But like, let's talk to each other like we're humans
Yeah.
and be like, what do you do in your spare time?
Yeah.
Like, what motivates you? Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years, professionally and personally? You know, like there's important aspects outside of just do you check all these boxes, yes or no?
That's interesting that you mentioned that. And that one of my favorite questions during a job interview is, tell me a time when you struggled.
I
Because
love that.
I do not want to hire someone who has never struggled. You have got to have struggled.
Yeah.
Claps for that.
I'm taking that. Like,
I
my
and
pocket.
I learned that from one of the guys at the agency. He did a lot of the hiring, and we did some hiring together. And he would always ask that question. And it's funny, he's one of my clients now.
Wow.
And I know, another full circle moment. And so I met him in person. I hadn't seen him in person forever. And I told him, like, that stuck with me. I love that question, and I ask it every time. And if someone says, I can't really think of a time that I've struggled, or
Next.
if their time,
yeah.
Real
You-
people
yeah.
struggle.
real people struggle.
If you
Yeah.
live in a bubble your whole life, you're probably not ready for the workforce.
Yeah.
Because the workforce comes with struggles and ups and
Oh,
downs and
and it
real
comes
challenging.
fast.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to adapt and take that struggle and like accept defeat or take on the challenge, like
Yeah.
you're gonna drown.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope we hire more people who struggle.
Yeah.
That's inspiring. I like that.
I really love that though.
I'm inspired.
Yeah. So tech tips.
Yeah.
I'll do like tech tips. So you sent along a little tech tip, but I'll give you the floor to kind of share more, but exploring, you know, how to get more engagement on social media posts.
Yeah, so that's sort of my zone of genius. That's what I love, is creating that community, building an engaged community. And the only way to do that is to, like, you know, it's give and take. Social media is social, after all. It's not just a broadcast, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's maybe where why I love organic social media so much, is because I see, you know, some ads, okay, they can be conversation starters, but usually there's like, it's a goal of, you know, selling something. It's a goal to convert people. Whereas organic social is really about, you know, growing your audience and growing the loyalty. Like, a paid ad can sell something. It can sell your pair of socks that you're selling, but your organic social will create raving fans of your socks, right?
Nice.
So I think you should definitely have a call to action on every post. Make sure you're telling people what you want them to do, because they will do nothing unless you tell them
Yeah.
what to do.
Good point.
Yeah.
So if that is, you know, double tap if you agree. If it's tag a friend who would find this really inspiring, share this with someone who could use this tip. You know, drop an emoji in the comments if you feel this way, or ask a question where people can answer the question in the comments, because a lot of the algorithms really, they want to spark conversations. That's the goal of social media. Like I said, it's social.
Yeah.
So you want to spark conversation, you ask a question. And you have to ask the right kinds of questions, not just questions, rhetorical questions, or did you know, or a yes or no question.
Yeah.
It's going to be a question where people are compelled to post something. You've all been scrolling through social media, and you've seen questions and you've not been compelled to answer them.
Yeah.
But you've also seen questions that you've been like, okay, I really need to answer that question,
Yeah.
right? So that's when you're sort of thinking those are the types of questions that you want to ask. So questions where you can get a story out of someone or get an opinion out of someone. What's the coolest thing you ever found on the beach? What's your best tip for traveling? What's the worst job you ever had?
a classic, but a favorite.
So
Fan favorite.
those types of questions.
Yeah.
So that's really how you can up the engagement on your post. And when you get more engagement, then the algorithms see that people are interested in it. It's sparking conversation. It's doing what they want social media to do, and so they show it to more people. So that's how you increase your reach. You get more engagement. You build that loyal fan base.
Yeah.
You build your audience. That's what you want.
Yeah. Add some personality to your post.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's funny because when I was, I guess, in school, they always said, like, stay professional, keep professional, use professional language.
No,
and
don't.
that
No
has
one does that.
Don't do
completely
that.
changed. It's completely changed to the point where you're almost not appealing if you don't show personality.
Yeah.
And it's the exact opposite of what was schooled into me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find, especially working in marketing and comms, like what I learned in school as soon as I left university, I took it and then whoosh, in the
Yeah.
garbage. Like it's great if you're writing papers all day, but
Right.
I'm gonna go back to it.
The
We're all
practical
humans.
experience.
Like
Yeah.
people want to know there's actual humans behind this. If not, then we're all just gonna get like AI generators to generate copy for us and then just send that out. Like
And we were taught by one generation, but now we're working and trying to attract a whole other generation.
Yeah.
So I think we know what works best for our generation and the people who we're trying to appeal to.
I think my background in journalism really came in handy because I have a Bachelor of Journalism and I worked as a reporter for several years. And we are always taught to write in a conversational tone and write for a, I don't know what grade level, but definitely below grade 8. So write in simple language that everyone can understand. Conversational, all of that stuff, which is exactly the way that you write for social media.
yeah.
Yes.
So it was super helpful. And my first hire, who works full time with me, she also has background in journalism. I think it really lends itself well to social media. So
Yeah.
because all of the journalism jobs are drying up anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
I know, the struggle of journalism.
That's a whole other topic.
a whole other
That's a
topic.
whole other thing. Oh dear.
yeah.
So I'm curious. You have a working space in Yarmouth, and have you lived there all your life?
I grew up, raised in Pubnico, which is in Yarmouth County, Acadian community. So French is my first language. And
cool.
so I lived there, and then went to university in Halifax, went to King's.
Sweet.
Then after King's, I was hired to work at an independent weekly alternative paper, sort of like The Coast, in Moncton, and did that until they were gobbled up by the Irvings, and then I quit because I was super idealistic and young. So I quit, and then I was snapped up by the CBC. So I worked at CBC and Radio Canada because I was bilingual, so they just sort of shuffled me back and forth because CBC and Radio Canada were in the same building in Moncton. So they just sort of, I was on one side of the hall and then the other side. And then I moved back to Yarmouth after a couple of years in Moncton. So mostly I have lived in Yarmouth County,
So what's your favorite space to work out of outside of your office? I know you said you had a beautiful loft,
Yes.
but on
We are
the day...
incredibly jealous.
Yeah.
If we get down there,
Yes.
we will be coming by.
Totally, I extend the invitation.
And if anyone listening has not seen it, please go look at her
Yes.
Instagram.
Follow Ingrid. What is it?
At Wordcraft Inc.
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
And go see all the beautiful photos and
Yeah.
get jealous
Yeah.
with us.
Yeah.
So outside of the beautiful loft.
Yeah.
Where's your go-to place in Yarmouth to work out of?
Probably my car.
Way to sell Yarmouth to the people.
And you were saying earlier you drive a Prius, so
I drive a Prius. I work out of my car. Yeah, it's like I'm so comfortable working out of my car.
Really?
I know it's really.
they are very cozy.
Yeah, and I used to do the trip back and forth to Halifax every week. So every Monday I would work in Halifax. So I was back and forth all the time. I would always stop on the side of the road because I had, it's social media. There's like a crisis situation or there's a recall or there's, something. So you've got to answer a few comments during, you can't go 3 hours without answering some comments. So that would always happen. So, very used to working out of my car. But there's not really any other places that I work out of in Yarmouth. I just love my office so much.
Fair.
We don't blame you.
Enough said. Enough
But
said.
that's all from us then.
Yeah.
Amazing.
We
This
wanna-
was so much fun.
Yes, thank you
so much. For what are we twins? What are we?
We
doing?
are. It's a Taurus energy.
The tourism.
Oh my gosh, I'm a Taurus too.
This changed.
There we are. May Tauruses are like
Amazing.
top tier.
Yeah.
Love it.
Top tier.
Love that for us.
Yeah.
Well, what a great note to end on. Thank you
Yes.
so much for giving your time today. And follow Ingrid at Wordcraft
Craft
Inc.
Yeah.
on Instagram. Check out her beautiful loft
Make
in
sure
Yarmouth.
to throw in some tags and stuff in the comments in the show notes. So
Yeah.
And if you
people will
need
easily be
social
able to see it.
media services,
Yeah.
Yes.
flow her way.
Sure.
And
yeah.
bilingual
Yeah,
services.
yeah.
There we go.
Awesome.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This was such a great conversation.
Thanks for tuning in to All Hands on Tech. Interested in learning more? Visit us on our website at www.digitalnovascotia.com. We'll see you next time.
This
has been
a Podstar